So the National Assembly is due to elect a president tomorrow. Still important conversations to have around what happens after that. And after a cabinet is appointed and a government gets going before the election, former President Thabo Mbeki said several times he believed there should be a new national dialogue, a place where representatives of all of our groups get together and discuss a vision for the future. At the same time, we know that while significantly more women voted in these elections than men, the National Assembly will in fact have fewer women than it did before the elections. In fact, as you've just heard from the list of premier candidates given to us by the ANC, it seems, from what I can work out, only 2 of them will in fact be women. That's in the 8 provinces where presumably there might be an ANC. That's 2 out of the 7 provinces. In KwaZulu-Natal, they're not nominating either. So 2 out of the 7 provinces, it appears, women will be nominated. Professor Cheryl Hendricks is the Executive Director at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation and the National Convener of the Women's Election Mechanism for Peace. Professor Hendricks, good afternoon to you. We know more women vote than men. We know women occupy more leadership positions in our society than ever before. And yet in our politics, where the decisions really matter, there's still more men than women. Why do you think that's still happening?
I think it's still happening because our politics is still largely patriarchal, even though we have a constitution that promotes gender equality, a number of other frameworks that do. We see when the political sphere is as contested as it has been for the 2024 elections, the percentage of women's representation goes down.
So, I mean, we've seen several organisations in the past trying to push against this. I mean, I remember the Women Forward movement in the 2019 election. They didn't get many votes, I'm afraid. Do you think these groups are making any progress? I mean, other countries are far further ahead than we are.
I think for South Africa, we really need to get together again as women, which is what we've been trying to do, both with the Women's Election Mechanism for Peace and now with the statement that we released. It's time for a women's movement to re-emerge and to reassert what women's interests and needs are in the new dispensation.
So, I mean, there's quite a big philosophical discussion to have here, because in my experience of politics, which is very limited, I don't know if gender is a big element of someone's political identity. So in other words, someone might join a campaign around race, they might join a campaign around a particular issue, they might join a campaign around a particular right that they believe that is being denied to them. I don't know if people in this country at this stage mobilize around their gender. And there might be really important reasons for that, but I don't know if being a woman is an important part of a woman's political identity.
It's a very good observation to make. If we were the majority of women who voted, and we voted all of these men in, obviously gender is not the primary motive for choosing who you will vote for. However, when our interests are being negated, then I think we have more reason to want to mobilize. It's clear that we will not have a president who is a woman, that only 2 political parties had women as leaders and they did not do very well. So women are not voting for other women. And I don't think that we should just primarily use gender as the primary motivator for who we vote for, but we should be using the criteria of who's promoting gender equality, i.e. these are hard-won rights. And if our political parties are regressing on these rights, we have a challenge, and that should become a mobilizing factor for us.
There's another thing that I notice in our society. If you listen to talk radio for 5 minutes and you listen to callers, they'll almost always be men. If you look at the letters section of a newspaper, or what newspapers are nowadays, almost all the letters come from men. You'll only see letters from women if they're actually representing an organization. You see it in news magazines too. If you look at the comment section on a news website, again, the comments are all men. And there's something in our society that's doing that. Now, a part of it is that I firmly believe this, men like the sound of their own voice, and that's a problem, I think. The second is that I think maybe there's structural difficulties that say to a woman from a young age, your voice doesn't matter as much And that is something we still need to get around. I don't know if you have any thoughts on all of that, but all of these things feed into our political consequences.
They do. And so Media Monitoring Africa, I think the last time I listened to them, they indicated that within the media around these elections, we only had the voices of 16% of women participate, which is very low. When we looked at the manifestos, very few of the political parties were emphasizing issues like gender-based violence, for example. Although everybody agreed that crime and unemployment and poverty, etc., were the issues, they were not indicating how they differentially impacted women from men, and therefore we needed to be responded to in a slightly different manner. If we're talking about the informal sector, it is women who dominate that informal sector, for example. And so, yes, women's voices are not there. They were largely absent from the elections. And that is why, Stephen, we were in, I don't think the word is inspired, but we were saying if we don't raise or amplify our voices right now, we're going to miss the opportunity. There is a politics of transition happening in South Africa at the moment. And we may have been silent prior to the elections. We knew coalitions were going to be coming out post the elections. We needed to make our voices heard, and that's why we developed the statement. And we being a large we, the Women's Election Mechanism for Peace, we're about 350 women in that particular mechanism, the South African Women in Dialogue, and many other individual women and women's organizations got together to put this statement, which is basically articulating what we won't tolerate any longer in terms of corruption, lawlessness, etc., and what we do want to see. We do want to see that the hard-won rights will not be marginalized by political parties now jockeying for positions.
There are other things that are happening around all of this. So you want a national dialogue. Yes, we can have a meeting. It would receive a lot of coverage. It might start important debates. The problem also comes at taking it after that. So action would need to happen after that. And I don't know what that action would actually look like.
So we're actually arguing for a women's pre-national dialogue so that we can galvanize support, firstly, for going into a national dialogue, and secondly, to have our demands then, in the form of a charter or something, as we did in 1994, and have that taken into a national dialogue. But post that, if we are not mobilized as women, organized as women, we are not going to go very far. Similarly with the statement, so we draft a statement around our thoughts on the government of national unity, and I think more it's a multi-party coalition rather than a government of national unity. But then so what? The political parties, we sent it to all of them, they simply just dismiss it. Nobody takes it very seriously because we are not organized for them to respond to us.
Organisation really matters in politics. Professor Cheryl Hendricks, I really do appreciate the time. It's an important conversation. We need to pick it up when the government is formed. Thank you very much indeed. Executive Director at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, also National Convener of the Women's Election Mechanism for Peace.